Go for it. Oh, I've got no music playing. That would help. Oh.
I love Rosie's text. It's going to be interesting. I was out walking, actually.
Come on.
And I thought, oh, this is going to be interesting. I have no idea when we're coming on. I'll just sit here and cheers.
Because I've got no music, it's not playing. So, and I don't know if they can hear me or not. It should be muted, but I don't think it is. So they're listening right now.
And now, the moment we've been waiting for. Australia's leading relationship counsellor, Jayson Mair.
Welcome to tonight's show. As I said, Jay from JMC here, your relationship coach, here to simplify those relationship struggles, because I don't think the microphone was on before, as I said. So there we are, all the details. Welcome to tonight's episode of Simplified Relationships. We're going where I do not want to go, but due to some very disturbing stats I've been reading about today, which has just been stacks and stacks about it. And some of these stats are from even like middle of the year, a couple of months ago, but I've also just been catching up on a couple of other articles that are telling us that, things are not going too well when it comes to our relationships. But tonight we're going to have some special guests, which I will be bringing on with us very shortly. First, we're going to jump in and discuss what's happening tonight. And let's just good morning, Sandy. Sandy from Kansas City is in the house. Thank you for joining us this morning, Miss Sandy. And tonight we're going to be discussing, where are we? There we go. How 2020 has affected your relationships. Now, when we talk relationships, normally we would just say, our relationship with our partners and ourselves. But it doesn't stop there. Unfortunately, there is a lot of relationship struggles. You've got your relationships, obviously, with your partner. You've got your relationship with yourself. You've also got the relationships with the people that you live with. Are they housemates, family members, children, all sorts of stuff like that? It can get kind of rough. And these stats have just been, like I said, these are back from them, a few months ago, and they're not good. I mean, some of these stats were back in, they did a survey the first half of the year, and this survey was done with an organization called Relationships Australia. You can actually go to relationshipsaustralia.com.au and look up their surveys, and you'll be able to see some of the latest surveys that they're having. And it's quite disturbing because, back then they were talking about like 46% of people are having relationship struggles just with their partners. And then it goes up higher when it comes to relationship stress with finances. I think it's even high as 67%, I read somewhere. Stress with work, if they're going to have a job or not. Now, these stats, I know they're not new stats because they're still in the middle of a current survey, but this was the middle of the year. Now, here in Australia, most states are semi-doing okay, except for the state of Victoria, which is quite disturbing. A couple of stats that I also saw in other countries were as bad, if not worse. Now, if I jump across, I've got also an article here that I've just come across that was only written yesterday in regards to, where are we? Let's go jump into this article. Here it is here. How to maintain a happy relationship in the event of a second lockdown. Now, if you look at Australia, for example, Melbourne had a second lockdown. For example, we had a lockdown from March till sort of May. started to ease around June, and then July, all hell broke loose, and it started to turn to a shit fight. Pre-warning, there may be a little bit of language included tonight, but because we're going to talk realism, we're not going to talk about fake media and stories and people saying and not saying sort of things. So it has been quite a tough gig. Now, this story had a browse over before, how to maintain a relationship second lockdown. Now, the reason why I bring this article up is because right now, some of you who may be watching right now also would be, let me just remove it. No, there we go. We'll get that. Now, we'll leave that up there for a sec. Paul, hey, Paul, thanks for joining us. Paul's in the house from Melbourne, Australia, so he knows exactly what we're talking about. Now, this story goes into a little bit of detail on how, all right, we just touch on this, the latter. Where are we? Over the last 6 months, we're all experienced a lot of change, job stresses for one, whether that's getting used to working from home or navigating furlong, swapping, carefree, large gatherings for socializing with small groups of friends, and getting to grips with dating and relationships in the context of 2020. I'm saying, I don't want to use that C word. I don't want to give it any more depth than it has. The latter can be tough for those in relationships. There is no shame in admitting that spending every waking moment with each other can put a strain on the spark. According to research in the Office of National Statistics, twice as many adults in Britain alone are reporting symptoms of depression now compared to this time last year. There is no denying this has taken its toll. As the local lockdowns are becoming increasingly common with the suggestion of a second nationwide lockdown looming, you may be starting to feel nervous about how you'll go through it all again. So with that in mind, I chatted to 4 relation experts to get their tips on how to stay happily coupled up in the event of a second lockdown. So it goes in and it speaks to these couples about how they're going to approach it and so forth. And it's interesting because they're trying to just, talk about, what they've learned from the first lockdown and what they can do. The disturbing thing of the whole thing is this title right here. I mean, seriously, how to maintain a happy relationship in the event of second lockdown. Now, for Australia, most of the states didn't necessarily have a second lockdown except for Victoria. And we've had the hardest lockdown in the whole state. And it has been going on since July. And we're now the 11th of October, September, August. Was it July, August, September, October? So nearly 3 to 4 months of lockdown. Plus, we had the 2.5 months lockdown in the year. So we've been locked down for nearly 6 months. And when I say lockdown, up until 3 weeks ago, we weren't allowed out after 8 p.m. So shops and grocery stores would shut at 7:30 so they could get their staff home by 8 o'clock. Unless you're an emergency service worker or, specialized, what's the word for it? Specialized, you know what I mean? Brain's not working tonight. You know what I'm talking about, right? The people that we need the most, the doctors, the nurses, the ambos, and so forth. But the concerning thing is there are countries now like England, and we probably have a couple of our people that will be watching on this on the replay, or might join us later tonight, who live in the UK and have told me these restrictions have already started as of 2 weeks ago. Now, because the Northern Hemisphere is going into winter, we're coming out of winter. So we're trying to ease the restrictions and get everything back. And the country is hoping to get back out of lockdown hopefully by Christmas and the new year. My concerns, and a lot of people are not talking about it yet because I think they don't want to put a jinx on it, but I'm just going to be a realist about it, is what's going to happen next year? You think we've got it tough now. What is going to happen if we go into a lockdown next year? And this is the reason why I wanted to have this discussion, and this is the reason why I've brought these people that are going to be joining me in a few minutes, because I want you to get an understanding that if you're struggling with your kids, with your schooling, with your work, with your partner and everything else, there's, the latest stats haven't come out yet, so they're not saying, but I mean, in the March, April, May lockdown, virtually, they were talking 49 to 60% of people were having major issues. There was another story I read this afternoon. Well, I think it even said it here. It was that it's I think it was double the amount of people. Oh, yeah, twice as many adults in Britain are reporting symptoms of depression now compared to this time last year. Now, how are twice as many people getting depression when, you know, they might have never suffered? And there is another report I read about a week and a half ago where there are people that have never suffered from anxiety, never suffered from depression, never suffered with any of this, are dealing with it right now, and they're not doing too well with it. And that's scary, because okay, we're going to come out of this, and you could say whatever you say about with deaths and so forth, but the amount of relationship breakups. I mean, I'm getting contacted like every few hours with emails, and you can see them jump on the website and looking at tips and stuff and the videos and that, to find out what we can do to help each other and help ourselves when it comes to sorting out our relationships. And it's not just the relationships, as I said, with couples. It's their relationships with their kids. It's the relationships with their parents, relationships with, you know, work colleagues, family members, other people in the house, housemates and so forth, neighbors. Also, it impacts everyone. You know, the amount of people that are getting really cranky going to buy a coffee and stuff. You know, I was in the Uber today, and the guy said, has there been an increase in people getting a little bit nasty? He said, well, business is quiet, but the business he does, yeah, it seems more in his face when someone is. And he said they're not always necessarily grumpy or attacking him, but you can see them in the back of the car. They're you know, in the Uber, they're agitated and they're stressed. And he said, because I was going to a doctor this morning just for a local injection I get every couple of weeks, but he said the amount of people that are going to doctors because they couldn't, they needed to see the doctor and that, just to talk to someone. He said the way they were talking to people on the phone, and a lot of the conversations were financial stress, stress dealing with partners, never spent so much time with their partner, and it's going crazy. It's driving them nuts. So that's been a massive, massive impact. And it's, you know, we're not going to, what's the point of avoiding it? We might as well discuss it, because bringing these people in tonight that I've got an awesome mother and marketer. We call her a bit of a Wonder Woman. She'll be joining us in a few minutes. And we also have an ex-radio and TV guy that has spent over 20, 25 years, and over half of his life working in the national TV and radio industry, and has 4 wonderful kids, 3 girls and a boy, a wonderful wife of, I think, 20 years. But we'll bring them on in a moment, and their stories would be good to just see how they've tackled it, because I just think they're people that really have quite a bright outlook on life, but at the same time still have their struggles. So these people might have a really good outlook on life and be happy people, and you'll tell by their smiles and so forth. But at the same time, if they're still having these struggles we're about to discuss, what about the people that don't have those smiles, that are not the people that can see the glass half full compared to half empty and stuff? And that's why I thought, well, let's bring these people on. At least then you get to, we will have a bit of a chat and get to know them and so forth, and just listen to their struggles. And if any of you guys have got any comments whatsoever you want to add, or any questions for either of them, by all means, please jump in and say hello and ask away. So without further ado, let's see if I can get this working right. We should be able to, here we are. And I better unmute them. You won't hear them. So I had to mute them before. In the middle, we've got Wonder Woman, marketer, mum, wife, superstar of Melbourne, Miss Rosie D. Welcome.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much.
To my right, your left, we've got Mr. the man, one and only, the man of 25 years plus of experience in radio, TV. You've probably heard him on radio stations from the Gold Coast down to Sydney, maybe even other stations around, because he's a bit of a voiceover man as well. So you'll probably pick up on these voices when you hear it. But welcome from Sydney, well, actually Wollongong in Sydney, I think, Mr. Ken Robinson. Welcome, Ken.
Well, good evening. Now, look, if I was on radio right now, I'd be going live across Australia. Welcome to Australia's leading international relationship counsellor. Tonight, your relationship may be in the doldrums, but it will never be the same. For the next hour, you'll be entertained, you'll be stimulated, but most of all, you'll get to listen to Jay. That's right, the Big J.
And there you go. There's a taste of what we might
Look at that.
tonight. Look at that. So thank you, guys. Thank you.
Come on, Rosie. Come on, Rosie. Now you can do your version.
Oh, look, I was going to say I'm the rose amongst two thorns, actually, but you know.
Oh, you are, yes. Very much.
You've been reading that book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. You're up to chapter 1.
Sandy has just put through nice intro, Ken. So here you go. Look, there we go. I'm going to get that banner off.
Well, Jayson, you're a star.
Yes. Well, what can we say? No, thank you. On a serious note, though, thanks, guys, for joining us, because it's I guess you would have heard the intro before. Sorry, I'm just trying to get things off the screen.
Well, it has been a tough time, no doubt about it.
And it has been, and that's the big thing that a lot of people are struggling with. And I just thought, you know what, I need to bring you guys on and just sort of really sort of discuss that. All right, I'm getting all the wrong banners coming up. Excuse me for a sec. Here we go. We'll get this right in a moment. So, yes.
And don't forget, Jayson has his program on Wednesdays. Now, I'll fill in while you get the things correct. Don't forget, every Wednesday night on YouTube and Facebook, join Australia's leading relationship counsellor. That's right, the Big J. Every Wednesday night, he will answer your questions. He will take you to depths of relationship you never want to experience. But what a ride it will be.
Thank you very much. Sandy says, hi, Rosie. Welcome.
Hi, Sandy. I'm normally watching your show, Sandy. This is a bit unusual.
Nice to have you guys on, and thank you for everyone who's watching the replay as well. And we appreciate it. So, as I said, guys, and we had a bit of a brief talk in the last 24 hours and stuff about what's happening with what's been going on. So what we might do first is just start with Rosie, if we can. As I said before, a bit of a Wonder Woman, a bit of a mum, a wife of, was it 20? How long you been married for?
Oh, 21 years. Been married.
You wouldn't think she's been married more than 10 years with those looks, would you? Really?
Oh, I tell you, yeah.
You got
keep going.
2 teenage boys?
2 teenage boys, 17 and 18, almost 19. So,
wow.
Yep. Yeah, I know.
And you're a marketing manager of one of Australia's leading universities in Australia as well. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes.
Yes.
Busy time.
So what we want to discuss is tonight, there's a few things we discussed before about, look, you've had a, just give you a little bit of a background, and Rosie's okay if I discuss this sort of thing. You might look at Rosie and go, well, she's pretty and she seems to, speak very well, and she's got, got her stuff together. But this girl's also had a lot of, okay, she's been married for 20 plus years and that, and recently just, heading towards, we've already hit the big 40, but
we have this year. Thanks for sharing that, Jay. I really appreciate that.
But at the same time, it hasn't been an easy ride. She's had her ups and downs over the years, and one of the biggest things she's had to deal with, not only with what's been going on in 2020, but also about 3.5 years ago, you had weight loss surgery and dropped 70. What, you dropped from 150 to 72 kilos? Was that correct?
Mm-hmm. Yep. So lost almost 80 kilos.
Okay. So then you did that. You went through that for a couple of years, and then late last year, you ended up going in and having, I'm not quite sure what the surgery's called. They actually remove all the excess skin.
Abdominoplasty.
There you go.
Is what it's called, but excess skin removal. Yeah.
So the first start of the first couple of months of 2020, you were, quite delicate. You had to look after yourself and so forth. Mm-hmm. So a lot of pressure was put on the rest of the family to step up and look after themselves as well as you. 2 teenage
mm-hmm.
boys are getting, old enough to look after themselves. But and also you work at the university with your husband, but in a totally different department. So it was a bit of a juggle to juggle between looking after your health and not pushing yourself too much, and then also dealing with your job, looking after hubby as well and his job, because it's a bit of a high pressure job with what he did, and then also look after the boys as well and hope that they're doing okay, because they've had a few stresses over the last couple of years with schooling, and obviously, like a lot of people who have had kids that have been through, forms of bullying and other struggles and anxiety and stress at school and stuff sort of thing. So it's been a bit of a, the everyday, we can say it seems to be a common everyday thing that a lot of people go through, but you had a few extra things on top of that to deal with it as well. And then you entered 2020 thinking, right, we'll get this all healed up and start to get
It's going to be my year.
Yep.
Turning 40 and fabulous. It was going to be fantastic.
And then around March, it started to affect your job. Do you want to tell us how that went from there on?
Yeah, I was pretty lucky. I got to stay at work for a couple more months than what most people did. But March was pretty much the start of our lockdown, and everybody went to work from home from that point. And I think we ended up having a month that we could go back to work in about June. But we've basically been working from home from March this year. And, hubby's working from home too. The kids are schooling from home. So we had to make sure internet was up to scratch and we had the space and things like that in the house. I think my husband and I started with desks next to each other in the lounge and thinking, we'll be okay. And then we both got on Zoom calls nonstop, and it's like, well, I can't hear. You're going to have to go down the other end of the house. And it was a little bit confronting for a little bit there. And I don't know. I mean, going to work, at least you sort of get to go and be someone else other than mum for a little while. So I think that's probably my biggest thing with being at home all the time is you're constantly in that mum zone.
Yeah. And it's a bit hard, like, I suppose, when you have times where I think we discussed yesterday about how, I suppose, if you've got everything sorted at home, you jump in the car and you've got that transition to work. I mean, you're about 30, 40 minutes to drive to work for you?
Yep, it's about that, yep.
And you'd have that also probably an hour or so on the way home as well?
Yeah, absolutely. And I sort of find that, you transition into that other person, that work Rose. Yeah. I'm no longer mum, and it took me a long time to sort of, get the difference between the two, where I could actually just leave that at home, go to work, not think about home, and actually just focus on work. And now that's sort of gone back a little bit, and I've got to get used to balancing that. So, that's a struggle. I mean, that's still a struggle.
Yes, it certainly is. And I mean, having two grown boys at home, or it's kind of like three sometimes with hubby there as well, sort of thing. And as we were saying yesterday, I mean, you get that, say, 30-minute drive to work to sort of, I suppose, clear your head, as you said, take off the mum hat and put on, the marketing manager hat. And then coming home, you sort of, give yourself half an hour. I think you talked about, sometimes stopping off on the way home to go do some shopping. I think most people now will be stopping into the local bottle shop for their afternoon.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Cheers to each.
Cheers.
So, I think a lot
I've been waiting for you to do that, Rosie.
Oh, yeah, you were going to making me go first.
I've been sitting here thinking, can I pick the drink up?
Funny.
So you have that, you normally would have that drive home to sort of, I suppose, defrag your brain from any struggles you've had during the day and so forth. And then, you'd stop off at the supermarket or wherever you were going to and then you'd get home and you'd be able to like take that breather. But a lot of people, including yourself, don't have that now. You get up, you get dressed, and you walk 7 steps from the bedroom to the desk.
Absolutely.
And
that's whole other drama, really, because you're not walking from the car from the car park to the office. So you're doing bugger all steps in a day.
Yeah.
You were spending a lot of time in closer to the fridge. So for someone with the history that I have, you really have to watch what you're eating, the exercise you're doing, and gained a good old 11 kilos this year. So back on the bandwagon trying to fix that.
So you lost, what was it? We said we dropped from 150 to 72, and then you've put 11 back on just in COVID. Yep. And you were right. Look, saying that you if you need a break when you're at work, you get up, you might go to go and have a toilet break for 5 minutes. Even if you don't need to go, you go and sit down just to get away from the monitors and so forth. Or you might talk to a work colleague at the drink fountain or whatever, or in the lunchroom. You go to the fridge it's usually what you've put in the fridge, unless you're one of those people stealing other people's food, but there's not a lot. But then when you go to your own fridge and it's full of what you normally, have. I mean, I know myself, you go to the fridge, you're working hard on the computer and you go, and next minute you've had like 2 days worth of meals in one afternoon because, and that's a massive struggle. And why that's the reason why I mentioned, your weight loss is because that's something that you've, struggled. You and I have talked about it a few times, how you've struggled to sort of maintain it. And now you've like head down, ass up into like, being as hard on yourself to really get that extra, 10, 11 kilos off. And these are a lot of things that, I know that the government says, we're going to be locked down and people will recover in that, but it's not just the mental anguish and being locked away, but it's all these things, the time apart, you have a crappy time at work. I suppose being at the university, you can go outside and go for a walk or around the walking track, or maybe go to the gym in a half an hour and that. And unless, you're lucky to have a gym at home, I mean, you walk out the front door and then you've got a mask on. And, if you want to go for a run or walk, you're like, oh, if I don't have it on, someone pulls me up about it. I don't want to deal with that. And it becomes a real big struggle. I mean, has there been anything that you've done that, maybe other people could do as well that has helped you, try and work around that in some way, shape or form?
I think it's finding that thing that you're out. So I have a friend that I go boxing with. So I'm lucky enough to have a bubble buddy, which if anybody that doesn't know, and within Melbourne, if you have a friend that's single, you can go and visit them at the moment. So I'm lucky I have a bubble buddy I can box with. And that kind of just gives me an out from being mum.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's something physical too. So your endorphins are going and, you're feeling quite good. And, like you said, normally I'd stop at the shops on the way home, have a bit of a walk around and a coffee by myself. Can't do that. Can't even go to the shops. They're all shut.
Yeah.
And other than, ordering things online and waiting for the courier to turn up. And, oh, God, I'm excited when that courier turns up. But I think he looks at me, he's worried I'm going to, I think he's worried I'm going to go out there and jump on him and give him a hug and a kiss, because that's how excited I look when he pulls in the driveway. But
that's the courier guy. That's not even your husband, because he's there 24/7 with you. So the husband must run out to the front door and go, no, I'll take it. I'll
get the parcel.
Shh, don't tell you here. Just give me the bloody parcel and let me get in,
Don't give them those ideas. That could actually work.
Yeah, exactly. So Kenny, let's jump across to you, buddy, and we'll just have a bit of a discussion with you and sort of. So you tell us a little bit about what you're doing. Obviously, you're in sales and business sales and so forth, and then give us a little bit of a rundown. You were obviously working.
Well, for the last, I've been married for 23 years. I have 4 teenagers. For the last 20-something years, I've run a marketing company. And I remember the night that the Premier of New South Wales and the Daniel Andrews, the Victorian Premier, announced that basically they were going to close the states. And the following day, I'd been booked for 3 days worth of sales training. And at 11:30 on that Sunday night, I had a phone call from a CEO of the company I was about to go and do the sales training for, ring up and say, I'm terribly sorry, but we're going to have to cancel. And that was $21,000 worth of work immediately out the door. And that's a bit of a shock. The other thing is, having worked, I originally started in radio some 30 years ago, but most of my career has been advising small businesses on marketing and sales training. So I have worked through the recession of the 80s. I've worked through the GFC. And as a sales trainer, or a salesperson or a business person in general, because of that experience, there are patterns. But basically, the pandemic has taken away all the patterns. For example, if you go back to the 80s and the recession in the 80s and the GFC, the housing market collapsed. And now in certain aspects around the country, we're having boom markets. But I want to put this in context because 10 years ago, my 3-year-old, I was on a business trip to Melbourne, and I'd said goodbye to my wife on the Monday afternoon, and we thought my 3-year-old had hurt a leg. And a friend of ours is a doctor and said, look, let's go up to the local hospital. We live in Lake Macquarie near Newcastle. And I just thought, worst case scenario is going to be a broken leg. And at midnight that night, I got a phone call in a motel room in Dandenong from a doctor saying that your daughter has a brain tumor, which is about a third bigger than her brain, and she's got 4 days to live. And there's a 70% chance she won't make it. 4 days later, our life stopped. She came through it. We've just yesterday celebrated her 13th birthday, and she's planning on going to the Paralympics. But to put this in context, 2 weeks ago, we went to her oncologist who's been looking after her for the last 10 years. And he said, look, she's fine. We haven't treated her in years. She's basically over it. And then last Monday, I got a text message from my wife because when she had the brain surgery, she had a stroke down the left-hand side. So she has hemiplegia, which is left side weakness. And so she has not problems with her eyes, but the messages that go from the eyesight to the brain on the left-hand side don't work. And I get a text on Monday saying there's something wrong. We need to do an MRI. The tumor may be coming back. So all of a sudden, the thought that I'm on JobKeeper and there's not, where's the business going to come from? That puts everything into context.
Yeah.
Because I think people can get so focused on their own problems and they become so overwhelming that they forget that there are millions of people sitting in refugee camps.
Yeah.
Next week, my wife and I will take her to hospital. We will go watch her go through an MRI, and then we will wait for 4 days to find out if her brain tumor is active again, which, to put in context, means if it is, we've got to put our beautiful 13-year-old who has a beautiful head of hair through chemo and hospital visits. And everything that we left 6 years ago is going to coming back. Yeah. And so I think as a country, I think we're very blessed in this country. In America, I've got American friends and they say there is no financial support. I mean, we've got JobKeeper right through to March. We've still got money. Okay, not as much money. Yes, I did lose $21,000, but I'd rather lose $21,000 than see my daughter go through chemo or possibly lose her. And so I think one of the easiest ways to deal with a stressful situation like this is to take stock of your situation and go, is there anybody worse off than me? Yeah. Now, what helps me deal with that stress? And I can assure you, those 4 days when I was told, the doctors actually told me prior to the operation 10 years ago that basically you should prepare for her funeral. These will be the last 4 days that you'll spend with her. How do you cope with something like that? Well, in my younger years, I went through the New Age movement. I was one of those people looking for answers. There's got to be a purpose and stuff like that. I finally found that becoming a Christian. Yeah. And so the way I deal with all this stress, and, back then when I lost the $21,000, I assure you it was very stressful because we'd already worked out where that $21,000 was going to go. Like you, Rosie, I have a mortgage. I've got 4 teenagers. I mean, my 17-year-old has just got his driver's license and getting a car next week. And I'm looking at footing the insurance bill. Mm. So we've got all these stresses. How do you deal with that? The way I deal with that is my faith. Now, am I sounding religious? Probably to some people I am. But my faith is not about being a member of a church. My faith is about being able to communicate with a God late at night when there's no one around and all the fears come up. What if she needs to have chemo again? Because I tell you what, we lived in the cancer ward for months. I mean, we were there so often in a big hospital that the security guards knew me by first name. I remember one night, Victoria they gave us some morphine and we had no idea she was allergic to it. And she literally shook for 48 hours straight. The intensive care nurses said, we can't deal with this. You're going to have to deal with it. And my wife and I had to hold her for 12 hours straight and deal with her screaming. So to put things in context, yes, COVID is a terrible thing, but there's also other people suffering more than us, right? And I think if you think about that, it puts things in context. The other thing I think is wonderful about what has happened, and I'm fortunate we don't have the lockdown that you guys are experiencing, and I can imagine that's only like being in a prison cell. But the other positive thing, and this is my business hat, is that in a boom market, it is very hard to convince people to do new things. If you're starting a new business in a boom market, people are going to say to you, we're making a fortune, we don't need you. Right now, everybody's been so shook up that they're starting to think, oh, maybe there's a different way of doing it. So for me with sales training, I'm actually finding people are very open to it because they're wanting to improve the way they are. The other thing is, when in history has there been a time when the government's actually paying your bills? This is now allowing me to go out and try new things. So, for example, I do public workshops because the bank's given me till January to start paying my mortgage again. I've got the JobKeeper coming till March. I'm now looking at trying new things because I'm not having to be in that 24-hour cycle of I've got to chase business because I don't know where the next cent's going to be coming.
Yeah, I touched on that earlier when I said sometimes I think people, when COVID first kicked in, I would say, I think this is what everyone's prayed for because we've always said, I wish we had time to do this. I wish I had time to do that. And it's like,
exactly.
We've all got freaking time right now, don't we? So, yeah.
I mean, another positive thing that's come out of this, I mean, you and I met through Leader, a 31-day challenge. You and I would normally not meet. Well, I mean, I live in Newcastle. You live in Melbourne. Yes. You're in relationship counselling. I'm not likely to be going to Melbourne to meet a relationship counsellor. I've already got one. I sleep next to her, and she relationship counsels me every day. I mean, she's, the old thing. The principle I live by is happy wife, happy life.
Happy life. Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? But the wonderful thing that's
tried and true, that one.
The wonderful thing that's come out of COVID is it gave me the time to do the Leader Challenge. And for those who are watching this who don't know what that is the ability to live stream every day in August. And as a part of that, we got to practice our live streaming techniques. Yeah. I became friends with you.
You did.
And because you're at
home, way.
Exactly. But because you're at home all the time, you don't mind taking my calls. Where if things were normal, your schedule would be packed out, my schedule would be packed out, and we would never get to meet.
Yeah.
And so I think in Australia, we are very blessed.
Yeah.
I mean, look at America. Who'd want to be living there? I mean, you got a president.
A lot of American friends
who doesn't even believe it's happening, even though he's got it.
Yeah.
You've got an opposition who looks like he's about to fall off the tree any moment. So I don't know if they're going to vote him in because he may not be around to see the distance. Yeah. But they've got riots.
Yeah.
I mean, we live in a country where we don't even have riots.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like in America, if they put down a lockdown like they have in Melbourne, there'd be riots in the street.
And now look, they did have lockdowns in some states over there, and it was part of what was going on. Mm. I mean, the same with England; they've had similar things, but they haven't had the riots and so forth. So it's been a very interesting thing how it's happened. So,
but if you want to cope, my experience with depression, because as you can imagine, having spent like 5 years of treatment. The first month of wondering whether my daughter's going to survive and all the stress. I mean, it is an enormous amount of stress, right? Yeah. And it wasn't just the dealing of her stress. I had 3 other children.
Yes.
Who had to cope with it.
And you have to make sure that they don't lose attention
exactly.
and so forth.
So having been through such intense stress, the first thing I would suggest to people is write down a list of all the things you've got going for you. Like now,
an appreciation list sort of thing.
Exactly. Because, and the other thing is, if you haven't got a faith, you don't need to become a Christian to call out to God. He's sitting there waiting to have a relationship with you.
Yeah.
And you may poo-poo that idea, but it's like the saying, like people say to me, oh, why do you always share your faith? Well, it's really simple. If you ever go to a really good restaurant, Jay, I'm sure Rosie, Jay, you've all been to a really good restaurant and you've had a really good time, and then you
I
go
don't know
back
if I can
next.
remember. It's been that
Yeah,
long.
if you remember, right? And you have a really good time, and you go back and back and back.
Yeah.
Well, it's the same with my faith.
Yeah.
Every time I go back and I get refreshed, I want to go back again.
Yeah.
And
But
so,
do you think, though, Ken, like sometimes when you're in a really deep hole, though, and to write an appreciation list is really difficult.
of course,
Like,
it's difficult.
you can't see it.
I know,
and
but
if
you
you're
know what?
feeling really flat,
Do you know what I mean? You have a choice, right? It's everything in life is a choice. And look, we're dealing with this right at the moment. My daughter, one day she's feeling optimistic since this news of the MRI next week. Other days, Dad, do I have to do chemo again? Dad, am I going to die this time? And so forth. And I simply say to her, Victoria, you've just turned 13. You know, who knows what's going to happen? I mean, reality is, talk about COVID. I mean, in New South Wales alone, there are 339 people die on the roads every day through no fault of their own. They simply decide to get in a car and go to the grocery store.
Yeah.
You know, does that mean we walk out to our car and go, oh, well, 339, maybe it's my turn? Everybody has a choice. Everybody has a choice. I'm just telling you from my experience. I'm not trying to be a super Christian type person. I'm just telling you what's worked from my experience. And that is when you go into a dark period. Like you can imagine, like we were told at that time that you've got 4 days. It's going to be an 8.5 hour surgery. They're going to cut her open here, cut from here to here, pull her face down, drill out a section of a bone, and it's going to take 8.5 hours to basically jackhammer out a tumor. This is a 3-year-old.
Yeah.
Now, Mr. Robinson, you need to go home, and you can't tell your children, because if they share that with your daughter and she is stressed, we will not be able to operate and she will die. Yeah. So we had to act. All our family came and joined us. Our church were phenomenal. They assigned 20 families to look after us. People came and did our washing. They did our cooking. They supported us for at least several years. We had families coming and doing stuff. But you know what? In those 4 days, yes, I cried. I cried like you wouldn't believe. Every night when I said goodnight to her, have you ever been in a situation, you know, like the HSC exam and you've got 4 days and it's like, oh my God, I'm going to die. You know, and it's a terrible experience. Well, that's what it was like. Okay. So every night, yes, I went off and cried. I bawled my eyes out. We live opposite a lake. I went and sat on the dinghies down at the lake and bawled for hours. But of a daytime, I made the decision to make the most of it. So even in the worst possible scenario, the sun still shines. You've still got food. In Rosie's case, it sounds like she's having a wonderful time with the food delivery man. So she's even got that to look forward to. I mean, up until now, Rosie, Uber man wouldn't even cross your thinking. Now you're having extra relationships with the Uber man. I mean, isn't this wonderful? I mean, here we are, you know, the wine's still flowing. So, yeah, look, I understand people are suffering and all that. But I'm telling you from someone who's gone through the pit of despair, there gets a point where you just got to say to yourself, hey, I'm going to enjoy this moment. You know what I mean? And the only way that I got through that is my faith.
Yeah.
If I'm sounding religious, so be it. It's like the favorite restaurant. It's like the favorite restaurant. If you go to a favorite restaurant and have a really good meal, you're bound to tell all your friends. Well, the meal that I did that feeds me every week is my faith.
Yeah, exactly.
And unless you've tried it, you can't really poo-poo it.
Yeah, and look, everyone's got their own belief.
Of course, I have.
I think that's something that, you know, a lot of people, you know, may or may not, because I know that, you know, you and I get along really well. We have different belief systems, but at the same time, at the end of the day,
I mean, yeah, you love having curly hair. Well, I like brushing my hair this way.
I know it's curly; it's just a mop right now. But no, but it just,
I know what you mean. Yeah,
it gets to a point where you've got to have something to believe in. It doesn't matter if it's Jesus or it's God or it's Buddha, if it's a Muslim God, or for me, it's always been the universe, or, you know, my nana and one of my best mates, and that passed away when I was really young, and something I usually do when I struggle and so forth. And I guess I haven't been able to do that as much because as I like to talk to them, but I feel I can only talk to them when I go down to the water because you're not allowed to leave 5 Ks from the house. It's a bit hard. But look, we know that, we all have our faiths and so forth. And I think I had this discussion with a couple of boys in some work I do somewhere else. And they were saying that they find that you don't disrespect whoever's faith as long as they're not pushing it onto you. But at the end of the day, if you have something to believe in, if it's like me with the universe, or if it's God, or if it's Buddha, or whoever it is you have faith in, sometimes you need something like that to sort of.
Well, for me, when I became a Christian in my 20s, it was I didn't seem to be able to get a date. I was depressed, and so I started looking. I thought there's got to be a better way of living life. Is life just about going to work? And so I went into the New Age movement. I tried a whole series of things. And I eventually, for me, that's what I found that worked.
Yeah.
But you know what? At the end of the day, you've got a choice. You can sit there and be miserable and focus on all the negatives.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the things I think is really important, forget faith for a moment, just if you talk about diets, take a media diet. I mean, if you want to get depressed, just watch the media.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Like, and I mean, that means a lot coming from you, because you've spent 2/3 of your life in the media, working for radio and TV and so forth. So it's good that you actually come out and say that, because that's one of the biggest things. I'll tell you now a personal story, and I'm being quite open, and I want to jump across to Rosie in a minute and ask.
I'm glad you're going to talk, because Rosie and I really need a glass of wine at the moment.
No, I think you need a glass of wine.
You got the wine? Come on, you got to join me. Otherwise, I look like an alcoholic.
Okay.
But the thing is, I know personally through, even when I met you through August with Leader, and even in July, and Rosie will know this because she's known me for quite a few years, there were some pretty dark days. I'm not going to, blow smoke up and, make stuff up. There were some pretty dark days. And I will admit that, all right, like we're all, well, Rosie's the youngest here, but we're all of a.
You don't need to mention my age. Just look at me and you can work it out. I'm at least 35.
Oh, only just.
I say 35 plus GST, so.
A lot more than that. Well, it must be New Zealand GST, because add another 20 on.
But anyway, as I was saying, there are times where of the older vintage, there's a lot, and this is probably good for a lot of people when it comes to understanding what they could probably do with their parents. Now, my mum and dad love them to death and miss them like crazy. But mum will get up in the morning, and I know she'll get up in the morning. Dad leaves at work, gets up at 4:30, leaves, and he's at work by 6. So gets up, leaves about 5:15, goes to, it's only a 20-minute drive, but he likes to get there early and stuff up on the Gold Coast. Gets to work, he works, he's 76, 77, works as a cleaner at a school. Mum will get up about 6:37, she'll get the washing out, she'll sweep around the house, she'll put the TV on. And then you've got, your Sunrise or your whatever news, normal morning program, which has news bulletins every 15 minutes. And then, that'll go through till 9 o'clock, and then she'll flick it over at 9 till, I don't know, Channel 10 show or whatever. And then there's news in the ABC at 11, and then there's the 12 midday. And then, you got the 2 p.m., the 3 p.m., the 4:30 p.m., the 1st at 5, the 6. And she'll watch it, like Q&A on the ABC till like 8 or 9 o'clock, and then go to bed at 9:30. Now, she's of a vintage, and they're of a vintage of when they were young. You had sometimes news in the morning, maybe midday news, but you had the 6 o'clock news. That was it.
And people sat down and had the dinner around it.
Yeah, but now you've got multiple, like hundreds of different news outlets out there with the same story, and they want to put a different spin on it. And then they put the different spin on it to the point that it's like, I don't know if you remember, I think it was the late 80s or early 90s. There used to be a TV show in Australia, and I know they've done this in America, where they'd have a lot of little skits and stuff. But at the start of the program, they would tell a joke to one audience member. And throughout the show, the joke had to be told to multiple people. You had to tell each person until you got to the end. And then at the end of the show, they'd bring the person out and they'd get them to tell the joke. And it resembled nothing of the original joke. Now, what happens with a lot of the news outlets these days, I think, is exactly that, because they want to get headlines. They want you to come and watch their headlines. And the sad part is now they're hitting social media. So not only do you have it, if you don't turn the TV on like me, I've moved my TV, as Rosie knows, to the other side of the room. There's no aerial to it. So unless I connect to Netflix or I'm watching something through Facebook or something, I don't have normal day news. Also with social media, the biggest thing that I did also, and this was through a little chat with, I had a Friday night drinks with 6 wonderful friends of mine I've had since we were in our 20s, up on the Gold Coast and North Queensland and so forth. And one of our friends, Dave, because he could see that I was struggling this one night. We're on house party and having a bit of a chat, and they had a few to drink and tell it the way it is. And even, a couple of them sort of went, "Oh, you doing all right?" I'm like, "No, not really." And he virtually said, "Look, what I found is there are a lot of friends that we have on Facebook that are putting all these mixed stories up. They put all the negative stories. I know, look, some of these stories, yeah, there probably is some belief to them and some truth to them. But when you're getting so many mixed messages, it's hard. And right now, like, we're sort of the story I was talking about, how to maintain a relationship in the event of a second lockdown and so forth. My tip straight away, without even reading anything of that story, would be, you're going to have to be hard. You're going to have to go through to all the people you watch. Now, if there's people on your list and you don't want to unfriend them, but they're putting negative stories, you can go into Facebook, for example, and go unfollow. So you're still friends. So they're like, "Oh no, I've still got the 264,000 friends and I haven't dropped one." But what I have done is I don't see their negative stories on the wall anymore. So I'm not pounded with all that negative stuff. 2, if they aren't friends that you don't talk to for a while, maybe unsubscribe or unfollow them, and unfriend them, because at the end of the day, you have to choose quality people in your life, and you need people that are not only going to support you, but you're going to support them and you're interested in. Otherwise, I think you're wasting your time. And thirdly, you've got to get to a point where there's, if there's pages you follow on that, and you might have liked them one night where you, after a few wines, you're like, "Oh, I like that page, I like them." If you're not watching them, unfollow them. And it's amazing how different your feed is. But overall, I watched a documentary on Netflix recently, and it was about, I think it's called The Social Dilemma. Yeah, it is The Social Dilemma on Netflix. And it is about 8 to 10 different people that have worked with everyone from Google, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, LinkedIn, Google themselves, all the different ones. And they virtually, the moral of it is, they explain how social media works for starters, and how it's a game. It's like a business. They're always trying to get your attention. And one of the biggest things they said straight away, there was a couple of things. 1, turn your notifications off, because it's like, I'm in the middle of an interview, but something's happening, on Twitter, or something's happening. And it's like, no, you're not going to die if you don't see that, because a lot of the times you'll start on that, and an hour later, you've gone through a half a dozen video or 200 videos, and it's like 6 o'clock and you've got to cook dinner, So if you're working from home or you're not working at the moment and stuff, that's something you sort of got to detach. And it is hard if you're by yourself to detach, but detach from the negatives, detach from the stories that are really bothering the people. Because there's always that small group of people who put this up. You might love them, think they're the greatest people and everything else, but when they're bombarding with stuff that's like conflicting with your, like with you, Kenny, your beliefs and everything like that. And it's really, I find myself, it was in my head. I'm just like, okay, all right. Some people say Corona is good. It's real. Some are saying it's not. Some saying that, it's run by Microsoft and Bill Gates and others. And you just get to a point where you get so bombarded, and especially if you don't live with someone that you
can I just bring another context in? Like, a lot of people, they talk about God, right? If you did a poll, most people have never read the Bible. I mean, one of the things I found that when I go into the New Age is a lot of these philosophies have rules to live by, right? Yeah. And you go along to a lot of these New Agey courses because you're not happy with your life and you're looking for a set of guidelines to get you out of the mess. I mean, at the end of the day, most of us just want to be happy. We want to have some relationships, have some friendships, and enjoy life, right? Yeah. One of the things I've found about being a Christian is that if you actually look at the Bible, and a lot of people dismiss the Bible, but the one thing I found really interesting about the Bible, it's actually 66 books that were written over 1,500 years.
Yeah.
At a time when there was no communication, there were no fax machines, there was no internet, there wasn't even a telephone system, and it was mostly written by uneducated people. And why the Bible has stood the test of time is that when they put all those books together, the actual the scholars in the 1800s, they all added up. And what I love about the Bible is it gives you a guideline.
Yeah.
So, for example, when I'm feeling stressed, people say, "Well, how do you deal with all the stress of your daughter?" Yeah. Well, I can go to the Bible in Philippians. It says, chapter 4, verses 6 to 9, do not be anxious.
Yeah.
Do not worry about anything.
Yeah.
But what you do is you go to God and you say, Lord, I can't deal with this. Like, I don't know what's going to happen with my daughter. I don't know if a tumor is going to come back. But it says there in the word that I can hand that to God and he can deal with it. Because, you know, as a man, I mean, you probably relate to this, Jayson, and I think most men would, especially as a father, your role is to fix things. Like if the, the fence falls down, my wife sends me out to fix it. That's my job as a father. Yeah. But a brain tumor, what do I know about brain tumors? Yeah. And so as a father, when I go to those medical appointments, I feel very inadequate because I just want to fix it. Like I would sell my house to fix it. You know, I move into a caravan to fix it, but I can't. So what my faith enables me to do is just to hand it over and just go, God, I can't deal with this. Yeah. And that's where the peace comes from. Yeah. But going back to the media, the media, there was in the 1970s, Rupert Murdoch did an experiment in New York.
This is not going to take long, are we? Because we need to talk to Rosie because it's not just...
Yeah, for sure. But they actually printed a newspaper that was full of positive stories. Yeah. And nobody wanted to buy it.
Yes. Yeah, I've heard
nobody was interested. Yeah. Reality is 15,000 people die of cigarette smoking every year. Yeah. Do we spend billions on that? No. Rosie, over to you.
Look, I was going to add to that, you know, I am not a religious person at all, but my church is my friends and family. And they are who I reach out to, and they're my support, and they're the people that I talk to. And I think that's what's really important during these times is that we do reach out when we need help and say that we're not coping. Mm. And same with people at work. Like I miss my work wives and my work husbands, like you wouldn't believe. Like you feel like you're grieving for people, but it's okay to say that. Yeah. You know, and reach out to those people. Yeah. Because they're all feeling the same.
Just to jump with you, Rosie, Ken mentioned a few times, but a bit earlier on, and that sort of what sort of things he focuses on and looks at sort of thing to sort of help him get through. Has there been any things, I know you said, you know, doing a list sometimes it's hard, but have there been things that have really been your focus that have gone, I've just got to focus on that, or you've noticed this has helped you more, or just got you through some really crappy times and stuff like that? Because, I mean, you know, as a mum, I mean, like a dad, you know, you got a lot of hats sort of thing, but mums being, you know, the Wonder Woman you are sort of thing, you juggle, women just seem to juggle a lot more than men, and that's not taking it away from guys, but it does get to, you know, you seem to handle it better sort of thing. How have you found it? What's helped you get through a lot of these things?
Well, I think it's finding those sort of outs for me, and that can be hobbies, and I'm not really a hobby person. I'm not a stamp collector or something like that, but
from what I've seen of you the last month or two, I think you've picked up some really good hobbies.
I've got an example here. So one of the things that I've done, a friend of mine started painting rocks. So so I started painting little rocks.
A little
M&M. So, you know, just sitting in front of the TV and it stops my brain from ticking. Yeah. So that was something we did. And I put them out the front of the house along the fence saying, take one. And all the little kids that went for a walk with their parents took them and they loved it. And that made me happy. Yeah. You know, I've done a paint by numbers.
Oh, you've disappointed me now. I'm going to have to go into two weeks of quarantine to walk past your house.
Oh, you are. I'll mail you one. I will. I'll send you one, Ken.
I need a rock.
You've taken up a couple of other hobbies too, I've noticed. Have you? Not just the rocks.
Oh, yeah, okay.
She's a rose between two thorns.
Yeah,
look, I've also made sock monkeys. And these ones here, I sent round the university when I've made them just to cheer people up. But yeah, it's just finding things to turn your brain off, to stop thinking of COVID, to stop thinking of everybody feeling sad or, all of those things. It just puts you in a different place.
I mean, even the exercise, you said you had your boxing buddy and stuff, and most people know that the boxing buddy has been me, but it's I know from my side of things, and even today I caught up with one of our family members today and went for a walk to catch up and just, I suppose, help him get out of the house and stuff like that because he's going through a separation and so forth. And I just feel that when you get home from, and I know that you're doing this the other day, Ken, as well, a few times, just getting out and going for your walk. And I know, Rosie, you do it most days in the afternoon. I think that's probably another form, I know exercise. Sometimes we don't want to use the E word because we're like, rig exercise. But I find
I don't like that word.
Just getting out and going for a walk. I know you've rung a couple of times.
I went for a walk before we did this, and where we live in New South Wales, we don't have the lockdown. I had several months ago a sciatic attack in my leg, and I found the only thing that relieved the pain was walking. But I found walking was a great way to relax my mind. Yeah. Just process everything and just have some time out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But the interesting thing that you're doing there, Rosie, is that instead of sitting around being depressed, you're actually doing something productive.
I don't know if painting rocks are productive.
Yeah, well, it is productive because it's allowing you to express your creativity.
True.
Right?
True.
And it's and it puts a smile to your face. Plus, by giving that out, you're blessing other people. Creating the puppet there, another expression of creativity. At the end of the day, I think, look, and I'm not going to bring faith back into this, but I think it all really comes down to choice, doesn't it? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think
if you want to have
right.
a pity party, you're going to be lonely. You know what I mean? Like, if all of us, we could have said at the time when Leader came on, Jay, I could have thought, I've lost so much money through this, I just couldn't be bothered doing anything.
Yeah.
And then I saw the Leader opportunity, and I remember the technology. I was all worried about getting the technology. My wife went on Leader, and she went into the car, and then she's broadcasting.
Exactly.
She said, why aren't you broadcasting? So I started broadcasting.
Yeah.
And out of that is I've actually created some friendships.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I think, depression is something that requires you to be in a very lonely place.
Yeah.
And if you allow it to become your only friend, it will isolate you.
Yeah.
And so at the end of the day, and look, even forget COVID and the pandemic, if you want to have friends, you've got to be a friend.
Yeah.
This business is sitting home and thinking people are going to ring you. I mean, my friendship with you, Jay, I don't think it would have developed if we weren't both reaching out to each other.
Yeah, no, totally agree. Agree. And look, and going back to what I was saying earlier on with, where I was, and it is a choice, but sometimes also though with, and I know it's probably against what you're saying sort of thing, but there are people that, I know there are a couple of people right now that are going through a tough time, and I have never seen them, ever. I mean, people say I'm always smiling and cheering and everything else, and I struggle. But there are also people I know that you would never in a million years see their struggle. And it just, best way to describe it, if you're a person who does like to get out, I mean, there are people I know that would be absolutely dwelling, like loving the way it is right now, because they can stay at home, they don't have to leave the house, they can sit and do all their introverted things and are absolutely thinking, I've been practicing this for years, and they're absolutely loving it. But at the same time, there's a lot of us who, where I live, as a lot of my followers watch, they know I live opposite a train station. The reason why I chose that is because I'm the sort of person who likes to get out and meet people. And you get out and you just jump on the train, go to the city, and I watch people and everything else. But at the end of the day, when you can't do that and that's something you crave, I mean, Rosie touched on it before, where, you just want to jump the local delivery guy and give him a hug because you're a hugger. I don't know how many times, even today, this person I haven't caught up with before, and I've went, hey, and I'm like, hey, just elbows sort of thing, because
Yeah.
it's very hard. It's still a very hard thing where you're so used to, and you say yes, you have a choice, and also once you let it in, sometimes it's not. I'll tell you now, I never went, well, I'm going to let it in. It just arrived, and I don't know why or what reason. Well, I know a couple of reasons, but when you think, okay, well, it's going to be like a month or two I'm off and so forth, and I'm going to stay home. And Rosie's probably the same thing, where she said, oh, well, we're going to work, March, April, we'll get to May, June, and maybe hopefully the second half
we'll be back.
we'll get back and everything else like that. But then it doesn't. So then you're like, okay, well, I planned this for a couple of months, but now this looks like it's going to stay. How'd you go, Rosie? Were you like that? Is that how you found it was?
No, absolutely. And even a couple of Sundays back, we were waiting for where are the restrictions going to ease a little bit again? And they didn't. Yeah. And they're even saying it again. We're supposed to get an announcement next week. And, am I going to be able to get a haircut? That's all I want to know. Right now, can I get a haircut? And, the answer could be no again. And then you feel like, oh, God, I can't keep doing this. Yeah. And you're telling the kids they can't leave the house. Yeah. So it's that constant sort of chain down.
Yeah.
Another few things.
Sorry, you go.
No, you're right. I was saying I've known people that normally drive to work, and for something, they're still driving around the block. They'll get up in the morning, they'll go for a drive around the block like they're driving to work, just to reset themselves. And same at the end of the day.
Right.
And I think that is a good idea. And even just picking up a coffee, on the way or something like that, if you can. And
it's having some sort of routine, even if it's not routine.
Exactly. And even to the point where, I've got friends that have already put up their Christmas tree, because it makes them feel happy.
I was going to say
why
that
not?
there has been quite a few that are doing that at the moment. Or I know a few in the States that have done it. A few here have done it as well, because it's the exact wording. I'll try to get the exact wording. When I saw someone do it yesterday, they went, and pardon the language, people watching, because there's going to be language, and they went, fuck 2020. If I want to have my tree up 3 months before Christmas because it makes me happy, I'm fucking doing it. That was the exact words she said, and she never swears. And I went, whoa. And that has been one of the biggest things that a lot of people have done. They've started to do things they've never done because they're getting to a level of frustration.
And you know what? That is really exciting, because I know that you guys prior to this lived a very fulfilled life. But Jayson, you're a marriage counselor, a relationship counselor.
Yeah.
You would know that prior to this, there were people who lived in their own COVID bubble.
Yes,
it wasn't COVID, but they were mentally trapped by ideas that they weren't good enough. They couldn't have a relationship. They had to deal with crap. And, I think one of the positive things out of COVID is it's making us look at who we are and go, right, I'm not going to let life dictate to me. I'm going to dictate my life.
Yeah.
And the fact that you guys are actually being forced to go through a test. Do you know what the biggest word in testimony is? It's the word test. And it becomes before the amoni.
Yeah.
So if you want to have a testimony of success, you're going to go through a test. That's what I hate about those interviews, where they interview someone and say, oh, you're an overnight sensation.
Yeah.
They never talk about the swimmer who was up at 3 a.m. every morning, 7 days a week, swimming in the ice cold pool, dragging themselves out of bed, their parents getting in the car at 2 a.m. and having to drag them out to the car to go to the swimming centre. They only talk about the fact they walked up, they got in the pool, swum 200 metres, they're a gold medalist, they're a star.
Yeah.
The reality is life, before you get testimony, you have a test.
Yeah.
So the actual fact, I would imagine that you guys have actually had a review of your life. You've actually probably started thinking about what is important. And when I come out of this, when they eventually let you out of the 5 kilometers, what you're going to look forward to.
Yes.
Because you know what, prior to this, like I remember a couple of weeks ago, Jay, watching your program, and you talked about a lady who was in an awful relationship and she was being treated badly. And as you described her, I just saw this bubble around her of entrapment. And the reality is she could have walked away at the drop of a hat. But her mind and her belief structure held her in torture.
Yeah.
And so if this enables us to step back and go, you know what? Like, for example, I've had a very successful business, and I do a thing where I make a lot of money, and I've been doing it for 23 years. I actually hate doing it. So what COVID's enabled me to do is, okay, what would I really like to do?
Yeah.
And so I started doing what I really would like to do,
Yeah.
because the government's giving me money every month that is subsidizing that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I think it's wonderful that people are getting the opportunity to assess their lives.
Yeah.
And I hope
think
it's
a good thing. Sorry, Rosie.
Yeah. No, I was just saying that we're not all that lucky. I mean, I'm a New Zealand citizen. I can't get any payments. My contract is up soon, and I may not have that renewed. So, you know, there's not everybody out there isn't lucky enough to have that government support. So I think
realize that.
that's another thing.
There's also a lot of overseas people that are living here, and they rely on, like, you know, they're doing a lot of work for cafes and stuff like that, which a lot of them are shut down. And there's a lot that don't get that, so that has been a big struggle as well.
I suppose the only point I'm trying to make is
that I'll stop you there, because we've got limited time, buddy. So we just need to get to it. I want to get through a couple of these comments if I can. So just give us a chance to go through them, sort of thing, because we've had a few people jump in. Sandy's got, that's right, Ken. You have to have gratitude through it, which is quite true. Faith gives peace. Evening all from Mr. D. Mr. D's in the house, or he was in the house.
Mr. D.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Where's Mr. D based?
He's down the other end of the house, is he?
He's down the other end of my house.
Yeah. Oh, the other end of your house. Oh, okay. I've always wondered. Now I can see what he looks like.
Yes, yes. There he is. The man of the moment. Isabel, thanks for jumping in. Izzy, nice to see you here. Thank you very much. Sandy, church is the people. Now, I'm going to touch on this because she says church is the people, but the other thing also is, as we said before, there are different belief systems, and I'm going to go through the rest of the comments in a moment, but I saw this and I wanted to touch on it because this is the same with Rosie said she misses her work husbands and wives. Work is the people. It's the people you work with. A lot of people, a quote I heard years ago was, people don't quit jobs, they quit managers, because a lot of the times when they quit, it's not necessarily the job, because that's the people. I mean, most of the places I've worked at and left, the people I have absolutely loved. There are some people that I'm still friends with 25 years later, and I worked for them for 6 months. But they were
as a self-employed person, I try and sack myself every day. I keep coming back.
Exactly. But at the same time, then it's like even a lot of we've had
everybody glasses. I don't want to be alone. Glasses.
Cheers. I've got nothing in it though. That's the thing. But what I was trying to get at is, you know, we've had a couple of personalities and sports people in recent years, you know, actually, you know, lose their lives through, you know, decisions they've made and so forth. And a lot of people go, you know, it's quite sad. But what a lot of people don't realize, especially when I work with a lot of relationships, which is a big issue right now, is girls, for example, they might have a group of girls that go and have coffee with, or it might be a mum's group, or it might be a get together where they might go out and have drinks on a Friday night, or they might picnic with the kids and meet up at the school playground on the weekend, or a playground nearby home, and they get to hang out. The boys, they might go and play a sport, golf, football, tennis, whatever it is. And one of the things a lot of people, I don't hear anyone talking about in the media, is it's not only the isolation, and you know, we talked about, you know, jumping the DHL man to get your package off him when he pulls up, and the Uber Eats man. But at the same time, it's that connection. When you go and play a sport, or you go and do something, and as Sandy is touching on right now with church, it's a relationship you have with the people you're there with. You know, they might be some people in the team you don't like. The majority you do. There's one or two you're like, you're a smart ass, or you're a bitch, or you're annoying, or whatever else it is. But at the end of the day, it's that camaraderie and team effort. Not only is it that you are a part of a team, you know, training or playing sport or whatever, but you also hear different people's stories. Now, we've heard two wonderful stories tonight. One, obviously, from Ken and his daughter and family. Rosie's as well. Mine's pretty average. But no, it's good. I know someone's going to
Don't forget, ladies and gentlemen, every Sunday night, Jay, the international marriage relationship counsellor, live on Facebook. You've got a great
I'm going
story.
to mute you in a minute, Mr. Robinson. You keep that. But look, it just comes down to you get that connection where I know a lot of places where I've worked in places where there's a lot of people. I've always enjoyed also listening to other people's conversations. Not supposed to listen to some of them, but the good thing you learn from some of them, you know, Rosie, working in an office environment a lot of the time, you'll hear them talk about, maybe it might be a show on Netflix, it might be something, a protest, or not a protest, a gathering of some sort, like, you know, it might be a picnic in the park or a concert coming up, and you're like, oh, they're going to be playing it? Oh, great. And you get that. But when you're at home, you know, you come home, I say with a lot of relationships that, you know, you have my time, you have your time, and we have our time together. And the reason being is because, you know, the girls might go out and have their, you know, their lunches or their drinks on a Friday afternoon, or meet with the kids in the school on the weekend and stuff. And they talk about all things in their lives. The boys, they go and do their thing and they talk about things. So then when you get home, you go, hey, babe, how was the day? Oh, well, you know, Lisa was talking about this, and Janie said, you know, they're going to have this concert in a month's time, and they're going to have this band there. Are you interested? So you've got a lot to talk about. But when, for example, when Rosie and Aiden are living in the same house, they're working for the same company, yes, they're different departments. It's like, hey, babe, how's the, oh, yeah, I could hear you from yelling the other end of the house, so I guess not good. And they're like, no, don't talk to me right now. Like, okay, yep, fair enough. And then you're not wanting to take it out, but, you know, normally if you get off a phone call at work, you're like, right, you get up and you walk out and you go for a walk. Well, you get off the phone and you walk to the other house, and then your husband's there or your kids are, Mom, what do we have for dinner? I don't talk to me about bloody dinner right now, because that ain't going to happen. Cook the freaking meal yourself, you know. So there's a lot of those tensions and stuff, and it does get it. So when, you know, Sandy touches on churches of people, church can be sport, it can be work, it can be gathering, it could be family, it could be everything. So I just wanted to point out that comment, because I think it's a very good comment to make. So I'm just going to go through a few of these others. The sock monkey. So Sandy, I think you might have to make.
Yeah, I might have to send her one.
Yeah, send one over to Kansas.
To send rocks and monkeys around the place.
Exactly. So true, Ken. This is a test. Very good. The best guest. Thank you, guys. Oh, look at that. Getting some love from overseas. They're all loving you there. Joanne, I've stayed in some jobs only for the people. I've left the jobs, but the friendships have remained. Rosie, those monkeys are fabulous.
Oh,
there you go.
Thanks, Joe.
Maybe you need to start.
Yeah, I'm going to have to start.
Yeah, exactly. We've got a few others I just missed at the top. We had Tesh, he dropped by to say hello, and thanks to Rose and Ken for coming on tonight. So thank you on behalf of me and that. Cheers from Sandy. Ken's daughter, many prayers to your daughter from Sandy as well.
Thank you.
No kidding, crazy days here. And look, you know, there's a few people I know that are overseas that are, you know, same thing, struggling with, you know, if they've got a job next week and whatever. I mean, especially the work I do when I'm not here sometimes is also I work in a government department. And I reckon 90% of the people I'm working with right now are from the airline industry. And I worked with a lady the other day, and she's worked for one of the major airlines for 17 years. And then she was made redundant in March. But then what happened, she was made redundant in March, but they were rehiring her again, but she had to reapply for the job. She hadn't, but they had to go through the procedure, got that. And then she said 3 weeks later, she was made redundant again because COVID kicked in.
There's a Jetstar captain, a guy of 25 years as a captain pushing trolleys at our local supermarket.
Yep. No, exactly right. There are people that I know that have been in an industry for 20, 30 years, and they're working at Woolies across the road here. There's one working at a coffee shop just around the corner there that had been working with her and her husband, and the husband's business went bust. So she's working there, and he's trying to, just do bits and pieces for different people sort of thing. So this is, I know it's a bit of a doom and gloom, but at the same time, I'm going to ask each of you at the moment, what things you have learnt from 2020 that you would like to share with the people that may help them through a tough time. So I'm going to give it to you, Kenny, first, but don't make it too long.
Look, I'm going to comment on Rosie's comment. She said, things are really tough, Ken. And I suppose I'm sounding very optimistic. I've just learnt from having gone facing my daughter's death and having to live with that for 4 days that there does come a time when the negativity gets very tiring, and you've just got to make a decision. I've got a choice. I can be positive or negative. It's like you can't smile and cry at the same time. Now, if you can't change your circumstances, you can change your smile.
Yeah.
And, it's a funny thing. There is a test. It's been proven that if you actually force yourself to smile, it releases chemicals in your brain that make yourself feel good.
Yeah.
So if you can't change the circumstances, why not enjoy the moment? You know what I mean? Like Rosie, when you were making the pebble and painting that and you stopped doing it and you looked at that, I would imagine a smile came across your face. Oh, that looks good. And you felt like a sense of achievement, especially the puppet thing, sense of achievement. You know what I mean? I mean, it's simple.
It's a little thing.
What's the alternative? Turn to the television? Oh, we're in lockdown for another 3 months. I mean, all that does is just make it miserable.
Then you throw the rock at the TV, bust your TV, and you've got no bloody TV, a busted rock, and no one's happy because there's no TV.
So I'm not trying to be, Polly, I'm not trying to be Mr. Utopia here. Yeah. I'm just giving my experience of being through the worst thing in my life that lasted for 7 years and having to. So it wasn't like we just went to hospital for a day or a weekend or a month. We lived in hospital for 2 years, right?
Yeah.
So having been through that, and it wasn't just my daughter we were dealing with. I remember one day we were in the ward, and there was a kid. Every time they took him for treatment, he would literally hold onto the door, and the nurses would have to drag him out of the room, screaming as his parents cried. I watched that day in and day out. Right?
Yeah.
I'll tell you what. I was watching. Have you ever watched? The Holocaust movie. Schindler's List. Right?
Yes.
The thing I love about that is right at the end of that movie, you see all those people who went through it walking across a field smiling. Because when they came out of horror, they decided, I've lived in horror for 3 or 4 years. The rest of my life, I'm going to enjoy it. Yeah. Now, if they can come out of something like that smiling and go on and live lives, why can't we?
Yeah. No, good point. Thanks, Kenny. And Rosie, what have you learnt over the last couple of months, and what's got you through, and you think that other people might be able to learn from and take away from it?
I think probably the biggest thing is to be honest about how you feel and how you're coping with it. I mean, if it's a crap day, you need to reach out to someone and say it's a crap day. I mean, the amount of times I've reached out to my boss and just gone, you know what, I'm just not feeling it today. And she's done the same. She goes, totally get it. I don't know what my problem is. I'm feeling really down today. And that's okay, because this is the situation that we're in, and we've never been here before.
Yeah. Yes. No, we have not. It is very unusual circumstances, but it's a bit of a struggle, and we've got to. I think the biggest thing is the moral of, I suppose, all three of us have said. You've got to have some sort of faith, but also even when it's a faith, as you said, Rosie, before, it may not be God or it may not be the universe, but your faith is in the people you choose to have in your life. And as I've said, many times, my family are the people that I've chosen to have in my life because of my background of what happened with my family. And they say you can't choose your family, but you can choose your friends. Well, I do choose my family.
Very good point.
It's people like you, Ken, as you touched on before, you and I are very different people, different very belief systems, very different backgrounds and so forth. But here we are through, my highlights of 2020 and things that I looked at was, I could sit there and say, well, it has been a crap day. It has been a dark day. quite a few dark days, quite a few drinks, and so forth. But at the end of the day, it come to a point where the leader challenge, as we've mentioned before, the live every day in the month of August, which I also do in April. If you look it up, people, if you're interested next year. But it was, someone touched on this. I'm going to go over it a little bit. Someone touched on this a little while ago, and they said that the start of the year, we had all the fires here in Australia, and obviously in the US, they had them late last year, and again, they've had them this year. And we had the fires. So the first 2 months was just smoke everywhere, and we had fires in New South Wales, we had them in Queensland, and we had them in Victoria. Whole east coast of Australia seemed to be on fire, and we're like, here we go again, it's fire season. And we thought, well, it's the worst case, it's the worst thing that was going to happen. And then they had Tiger King, which we thought was going to be the worst situation of a TV show, we're going to be in. And then we thought, okay, and then COVID hit. Now, the first couple of months, March, April, May, the amount of people that I know that started to do things they'd never done before. They were going on, knocking on neighbors' doors and just saying, hey, look, I'm next door. I know that I'm not quite sure if you've got people to help you or not, but I go to Woolies, once a week. If there's anything, here's my number. Let me know, and I can pick something up for you and so forth. So there were things like that. There were people jumping on apps like House Party, and Facebook Messenger was opening up rooms, and there was all the Microsoft Teams and stuff like that, where people were actually starting to reach out and reconnect with people. I connected with 2 or 3 people I hadn't, probably 5 or 6 people that I hadn't spoken to, some of them 15 years. And it wasn't like we had a run-in and we stopped talking. You just, life got in the way, moved state or moved country or whatever. And then I opened up House Party, for example, and all of a sudden this name came up, and I went, and it was a nickname. They use their code names. And I went, who's that? And they added me, and then they rang, and I went, oh my God, how are you? It was incredible. And then all of a sudden, her sister jumped on, who I hadn't seen for years, and we'd kind of met and sort of dated for a short while and decided to be friends. But I hadn't seen them in years. So we chatted and we got talking, and even one of the conversations I had with that person led me to doing my wedding celebrant course in the middle of the year, and it gave me a chance. So I look at those things and think, okay, March to May, it started to give me faith in humanity. It really did. And then we had, we're starting to come out, and we're all like looking for the positives, let's come out, start doing stuff and whatever else. And it sort of, and I even said in a video back then, I think it was something we all prayed for, because there were so many people going, well, I don't have time to do this, and I've got an unfinished, garden out there, and I don't have time. Well, you freaking got time now. So we made the most of it. It was great. But then, with Britain starting to have lockdowns coming in, very soon, or already starting to come in some areas of Britain already. We don't know, we're supposed to hear something today. I'm not quite sure if we heard something, Rosie, or not, what's happening next week, but
no, still waiting.
We're still waiting. So we don't know when we're going to get out of that. There's talk. I heard the other day that from 3 people within the airline industry are saying international flights end of 2021. So another year and a bit away, year and a half away, which is quite frightening for, some people that, have got long distance relationships and, just want to see their loved ones sort of thing. It makes it extremely hard. But, we've, as a good friend of mine has said to me recently, we've just got to live in the moment. And I think that's what it was. And then as August come around and we did the leader challenge, even before then, we had all the racial riots in the States and so forth. And it started to bring, and then there was talk about it may happen here, and a bit of conflict between, people and the government and so forth and thing. And then it went into lockdown again. And a lot of people then started to go, oh, hang on again, what's going to happen? When we did the leader challenge, it was, just to give you a background, you have to do a live video of 31 days. They give you a challenge each day. You've got to talk about something. You can go for 1 minute, or you can go for 1 day if you want. Just so it gives you a bit of background for people who weren't in it before. And what I come across was there were over 500 people in this challenge. And what I come across was something that absolutely blew my mind. And I said on day 31, I think you were there, Ken, when I said it, I said that this challenge, because right through the 31 days, apart from myself, there wasn't many other people that mentioned the C word whatsoever, which was good. It was like we were in our own little bubble. And sometimes you need your own little bubble to block out all the outside information and outside negativity and stuff like that. And I got to the end of that and I went, despite all the riots that were going on and all sorts of chaos around the world and everything like that, and people complaining about governments with lockdowns and stuff, my biggest thing was I really had faith in humanity because there were people in this group that, like yourself, Ken, and there's a few on here, Sandy and Isabel and a few others that have popped on and so forth over the last few shows. They gave me hope because they were actually had said such beautiful things. They said such nice things of support. It wasn't like, your camera's a little bit off for you. Hello, can't hear you. What are you? It was a very supportive community. And what I will take out from that is we friggin' need to do that more. We need to stop looking to find out whose fault it is.
The only positive thing that's come out of 2020 for me is I developed a relationship with you, a good friendship with you through COVID. I mean, you even said to me a week or so ago, I talk to you more than I talk to my actual friends.
Yes.
So I'm a cyber friend.
Watch it, because one of them right next to you, and she was trying to ring me while we're talking, and she felt a bit But at the end of the day...
But the other thing is, Jayson, can I ask you a question? I mean, you're the relationship expert. I mean, Rosie and I, we've just been married for 20-something years. I mean, we're just mere beginners in this whole comparison to yourself, Jayson. If you were sitting down and talking to a person who had been in a lockdown called a bad relationship, and it hadn't been going on for 6 months, it'd been going on for 5 years, what would you say to them to A, cope with that bad relationship, and B, move on from that?
Depending on where they are, if they're where we are right now.
Well, just talk generally.
In general. All right. I would say that, as I was saying before, we wanted time to do stuff and we've had time. The universe, as I class it, sends us signs all the time. It sends us messages and so forth. And sometimes when I had this conversation with a very close, good friend of mine recently, well, actually two of them I've had this conversation with, but I said that in particular and they were in a very similar situation to what you described. And I said to them that the universe, God, whoever you want to call it, will send us signs to do stuff. But you've got to get to a point where you've got to start to be a little bit open with the signs and not, and I won't go into too much detail because I know I could talk about this one for about an hour, which is a good topic we'll talk about, is they say that things happen for a reason, but it comes down to the reason we choose to give it. For example, you might say, well, he cheated on me. So, the reason I'm giving is I'm a lousy lay or I'm not very good to be with and I'm just going to, never be with a relationship again. But then when I've worked with clients and as you know, like you've just done, is asking quite topical questions, very good questions sort of thing in regards to it. And I'd go, okay, let's just explore. Let's just have a little bit of a play. What other reasons? He's fallen out of love with me. Yeah, cool. What else? He thinks with his dick and just wants to sleep with anything that moves. Yeah, very good. He's commitment phobe. Very good. What else? He could be, there's something about me that's not necessarily me, but there might be something, as I would say, the shoe may not fit, if you know what I'm talking about, and he's not able to say that to you. It might be he's dealing with his own crap, and instead of dealing with it, he's just avoiding it, and he's ignoring it and just covering up, sweeping it under the carpet. There are so many reasons. So sometimes we have to look at the reason why it's happening, and not necessarily, it's not always the reason that we choose to give it. So if someone was in that situation, I'd say, have a think, not just of the reason why you think it's come to this. And look, I'm going to be brutally honest here, and it is kind of a little bit against guys, but hey, we're guys. So, and I always say to everyone who watches, I'm going to be honest, no matter how harsh it is. But at the end of the day, unfortunately, women will do whatever they can because it seems to be an inbuilt motherly instinct that I need to do everything I can to make this relationship work, or I need it to work for the kids, or I need it to work for me, or I need it to work for my parents, because if it doesn't work, I'm going to be a failure at this relationship. But the thing I also say to you is, are you 100% entirely responsible for everything that happens in the relationship? And you know what the answer is, Rosie?
Hell no.
Exactly. That's what I'm going to get from you, because you can only control what you do, you feel, you act, you react. You can't control the other person, even though there are some, if you saw last week's episode, there are some that think they can control the other person. But it comes down to, you've got to get to a point where you go, okay, I think it might have been Jordan B. Peterson. I read it, an article of his or something. And it was an interview he did. And he said, why is it that we feel we must have one relationship for the whole life, no matter how good or how bad it's going to be, but we need to have that one? Where if you're going to have one of 30, 40 years and you're unhappy for 2/3 of that, is it really worth it? Where you may have 2, maybe 3 awesome relationships that may end, but might end amicably, and you've experienced 3 of the greatest loves of your life, not at the same time. They've gone through periods of time, because as we all know, when it comes to, you touched on it, Kenny, before about a hairstyle, like if you saw my hairstyle a couple of months ago, that someone who's seen it and went, wow, you had long hair when you were young. And I'm like, yes, I did. And I even said it to you, Rosie, with your son. You got 2 boys. One's very, very short hair, and the other one looks like a bloody rock star, and he's got his long red hair that's waving around. And you'll find, though, in 10 years, 20 years, 30 years' time, that style won't be for them. They will outgrow that style, or they'll go, well, they're not going to be, okay, there are some guys that have got their long hair when they're 18 and they're 68 and they're still not, they're combing it back, and you can see all the, the roots and everything where they've had it regrown and stuff like that, but they won't let it go. But there are times where everything changes, your style, your thoughts. So when we talk about belief systems, I would say to you, let's have a look at your belief system. And I don't necessarily mean universe, God, Jesus, Buddha, or anything like that. I mean, what is it that your belief system is built on? Because sometimes too, we build our belief system on, it seems to come from like our siblings or our parents. And for us to challenge that, and for me to challenge your belief system, a lot of people will say to me, no, my belief system's fine. Because I think if they're going to say, oh, well, yeah, it's not working for me, it's then going against their love of their parents, and their parents were wrong all along. No. What we're saying is, your parents had that belief system at that particular time when you learnt it, because it served them for whatever purpose it is. It does not mean that that belief system or those foundations are exactly right for you. What worked for you in the 80s is not going to work for you in the 2020s, because there's so many different circumstances, different styles, different hairstyles, different clothing styles, all the outside influence from social media and so forth. And it's a totally different way of life, where there are some people that will stick to that. So I would say, have a think about what your foundations and your beliefs are. Don't be afraid to question them. It's not a degrade. It's not a going against where you got them from, but it might be saying that, hey, it's not working for me and I'm not happy. And we're not talking about it's not happy after 6 months. We're talking about we're not happy after 15 years or 20 years or 30 years. And now, because there's a lot of couples that I've spoken to that, for example, they've been one couple, they'd been together for 7 years. But when I sat down with them, we worked it out. They'd only been together a year and a half. There was 5.5 years where they were separate, as in they were fly in, fly out workers. One would be working in medical, so she was a lot at hospitals and stuff and everything. He worked, I think, in the mines, and then he worked for a company where he traveled a lot. You mentioned, Kenny, before that you flew out a lot. You were in Sydney and Melbourne and Brisbane and everything else. So there was a lot of times you weren't home, and it seems to extend the relationship. You talk and so forth, but you're not on top of each other. And then you go to what we're doing this year, where there's so many people that are in each other's faces and are in each other's, lifestyle, and there's no break. And
you'll be married.
It pushes you to make that decision to go, I've thought it, I've sort of pushed it away thinking it's nothing, but it's as plain as the nose on my face right now that it's really not working. But also make sure that you look at it as it is not working, because you've realized you're not right together. Because also there is a lot of circumstances when you're stuck inside. There's a lot of tension and it also could be taken the wrong way. But the majority of ones that I've spoken to, they've all said to me, I've been thinking this for a couple of years. I haven't been happy for 3, 4, 5, even 10 years, someone said, out of a 21-year relationship. And this has just, as you touched on at the start with the question, Ken, it's virtually put them in a position to go, you know what, I'll make the decision now, because if there was ever a time I needed to know if it was going to work, this is the time right now, because we can't stand the sight of each other. And I don't think even if we weren't here, it's pushed people, it's forced people in a point where they've just gone, right, how much more friggin' notice, signs from above or whatever do I need to give you to say, make the decision and get out? Because if it's affecting your health, if it's affecting your happiness, if it's affecting all sorts of areas. And I read a story, I think I might have touched on last week, that people were losing the impact of the stress. People are losing hair at a rapid rate because of the impact of stress. So it affects all sorts of stuff. And there's even research that some stress can be so bad that it can cause cancer and other life-threatening diseases. And I just go, you know what? Save yourself. Save your life. You know the old song, How to Save a Life? It talks about a couple that, are trying to, get back together and stuff. But sometimes you need to save your own life. If they're not willing to grab hold of the flotation device and they think they're tough enough, let them deal with it. You're not their mother. You're not their father. And sometimes you need to make decisions to save yourself. Otherwise, you could be taken down. So I know it was a bit long-winded answer, but I hope that sort of kind of answered it for you.
I mean, I've been married for 24 years. And I remember when when Victoria was 3 and we went through the cancer thing, we joined a group called Camp Quality, which is for kids with cancer.
Yes.
And we went to one of these weekends. And the first family we met was a mother and a son who had cancer. And we got talking, and it came out that the day that she found out that her son had a very severe cancer, her husband packed up the bags and left. So because he wasn't willing to stick, not only by his wife, but by his child. Yeah. Now, I don't know about you, Rosie, but in my years of the people I've met, the people who've got long-term relationships and have been through a lot of crap, their attitude has been, it's not just about looking at the other person and looking at all the things that are wrong with them. It's about looking at yourself and going, well, what part do I have to play in this?
Yes.
And how committed am I? Do you know what I mean? Because I've met people who've walked away from marriages, and I'll tell you what, they seem to be a lot unhappier than the people who went, okay, my marriage is not great, but I'm going to do what I can to make it work. And I'm going to sit down with my partner. And I've talked about love languages. I mean, one of the best things I did in my marriage, my wife is in the exact opposite of me. What motivates her, what her love languages are entirely different to mine. Yeah. The day I started implementing loving her the way she needed to be loved, which is not my love language, things started improving.
Yeah.
And I think if you want to have a successful relationship, because let's face it, we all come with baggage. We've got our childhood, we've got rejection. We've all been rejected at some point in time. I think you've got to sit down and go, okay, what can I do? Now, obviously, as you say, Jay, there does come a time if someone's being bashed and being treated really badly,
Yeah.
They've just got to leave. I mean, it's not healthy.
That's part of what I'm saying.
You know, it's not
You've got
healthy.
to look.
But a lot of people, they want it all their own way.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I just couldn't believe that a father, he's just found out his son's got this severe cancer, has just decided, I'm packing up and walking out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? In actual fact,
Joe's put up there, Ken, that's shocking. That man didn't deserve to be.
In actual fact, what the cancer did with our situation, it made us all of a sudden forget what was important to us, and what we started focusing on what was important to our family.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because look, if you've gone to the trouble of getting married to somebody, there are obviously some sparks there that happened in the first place. It's like any investment, you know, you've got to work at it. But unfortunately, we live in a world where everything's 24/7. If I don't like something, throw it away. But you know, the funny thing is, when you throw something away, you normally go and find something exactly the same because you haven't sorted out your own crap.
Yeah. And that's what I was touching on there. You've got to make decisions. And when I say you've got to look at your foundations, your belief values, it's not just saying what I can get out of it. It's what I can give. But you can't, as I said, you can't control the other person, but you can control what you do. Now, there are two ways you go about it.
But if you go out of your way to try and improve things, right, there obviously comes a point in time, if it's just not working, it's just not working. But unfortunately, a lot of people, they're constantly looking at everybody else saying, it's like, oh, I have no friends, but they never ring anybody. You know what I mean?
And look, what I stated, though, in the answer was I covered both sides of that. Like, there are people, you can't control the other person. You've got to start to look at yourself. And I don't mean look at yourself to be selfish, but you need to look at yourself to go, what part am I doing? What can I do? What can I not do? What's happening? But as I also said, there comes a time when if you've been doing that so much and the other person, I'll tell you now, I reckon it's probably 85. I haven't done a recent check, but I reckon it's about 85% of couples. And when I say couples, a lot of the times it's one person, and a lot of the times it's the wife that will come to me for relationship advice and work with them. And they'll say the husband wants to be a part of it. And at least 85, it's probably even higher as like 92% after the third session, the husband doesn't turn up. And you know why? Because he will say, I already know what you're talking about. I don't need to hear it. And I sit there and say, well, mate, there's two things you're going to do here. You either do what you can to make the effort, not to please her, but for your own looking after yourself and for your own kids and your own future, or don't. Because I tell you now, if you don't, two things are going to happen. You're going to get home one day and she's going to be gone, kids are gone, and you're going to go, what the hell happened? I didn't see that coming. Well, you think when you came to us and had a chat about it and you said, I know this, I know that. Well, if you knew all that, you wouldn't be in the position you are now. So you need to take responsibility. As I've got on one of my old business cards, I think I've mentioned a few times, on the back of the card, it says the day you take responsibility for your own actions is the day you move from childhood to adulthood. And I tell you now, there are people on this planet, it's not all men, there are women as well, that will get to on their deathbed before they're willing to realize that they've been selfish and haven't taken responsibility and want to blame everyone else for their actions and have not bothered to do what they need to do. And it is sad that they get to that age before they go, I'm sorry for what I did. 80 years, 70 years, 60 years, you wait till then before you say, bit friggin' late, dude, you just lived a life of a lie. Or girl, you've lived a life of a lie because you think that you were all perfect and you weren't willing to take the steps to correct it, to help yourself, to get the help you need. And that's the biggest struggle that a lot of relationships, where I end up working with the wife. The wife does great things. She gets empowered, she grows, she becomes, amazing. And she's the one that has to go, right, it ends, or has walked away, but she hasn't walked away while he's got cancer or anything else. She's done everything. She's ticked off all the boxes. She put as many years of effort in. Has she done this? Has she done that? Is what has the other person done, to continue this and make it happen? And at the end of the day, there is like about a 15% of guys, and I will admit it is actually getting a bit increasing. I'm probably getting more now, about 25% of guys that are calling and wanting to reach out and talk and make it work. And the same thing, they're actually the good ones that make the effort of contacting me and do that. They're the ones that are actually going, you know what, I really do want to work. And I'll tell you now, they're all under 40, which gives me faith that the younger generation is starting to wake up and starting to go, I'm not going to do what my parents did. I'm going to try and do what I can to improve the relationship or improve my responsibilities and my actions in what I need to do. And that's the biggest thing and the biggest take.
I mean, the old saying, opposites attract, right? If the person's opposite to you, it isn't it worthwhile going and getting a manual on how the bloody opposite works?
Yeah, well, if there was a manual, I think it would make it a hell of a lot easier. So.
Well, I mean, the only manual I've read is the 5 love languages. And I found that very revealing to find out what my wife's love languages were. So, for example, things like, acts of service. So if I go and do the washing up, she feels very loved. Now, if my wife did washing up for me, I'd just go, why aren't you sitting down and spending quality time with me? That's not going to washing up, right? So we have different love languages.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing is, Rosie, it'd be interesting to hear from you. When you were going through all that surgery and stuff like that, I would imagine that awful experience probably strengthened your relationship, because I'd imagine your husband came alongside you and supported you. You know what I mean? So sometimes through negative circumstances, positive things can come out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because
there's also the opposite to that, though, Ken. Like sometimes
I knew she was going to do the opposite. She couldn't resist. Let's have a good debate.
Yes.
Come on, Ken.
We're going to let her finish
seriously.
to wrap it up. So go, Rosie.
Yes, he did. He was there through both the surgeries. A lot of surgeries that I've had over the years, and he's held my hand and got through that. But then I also lost a lot of weight and I looked a lot different, and he kind of started to feel a little bit insecure. So there was, some, I guess, things that we had to deal with and sort of communicate about in that time as well. So yes, it's definitely made us stronger, but it's not as easy as that.
Well, if the Uber's driver was hugging my wife, I'd get jealous too.
No, it's exactly right, guys. But look, we've gone way longer than we wanted. We don't have many more comments there, but I just wanted to say thank you to each of you for coming on tonight.
I thought it was just us. I thought we were just having a friendly chat.
Yeah, no.
Are we going live?
Yeah, well, should have told you that before. We might have had to say I'm going to hit the mute button on you a bit more, you bloody wild crazy guy. But look,
you know what? I'm looking at the screen now, and I'm very concerned that I'm not social distancing 1.5 meters from 2 Victorians.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
That's true.
You're pushing it, boy. You're pushing it.
Yeah, I want to turn this way and just cough on you or something. Should I be doing something like that?
No, but look, at the end of the day, I want to say thank you to each and every, for both of you for coming on and sharing your experiences, because I think it will help a lot of people just, get through. I mean, there's a lot they've got to watch if they watch a replay, nearly 2 hours sort of thing. But I think there's some really good tidbits in there that they really sort of need to. Oh my God, what's he doing? Bloody hell!
I've got my face mask.
Where do we find this guy? But look, the reason why I chose you two as well, not only because I know you both very well, but you do have very different backgrounds and you have a very different look on things. Of a similar sort of situation, but have different perspectives, which is good. And it's good to sort of there are people out there from all walks of life that don't want to just hear one side of the story. They want to hear both sides of the story, and they want to learn that. And I think they've pretty much got that tonight. So I thank you guys, for you, Rosie, for Wonder Woman, for jumping on and being here. So thank you very much. If anyone's look at this theory. Oh, no, wrong one. I'm hitting. Hang on.
He's trying to get rid of me. There
we go. There's the Wonder Woman. Rosie D in the house. Looking spectacular on a Sunday night. And she's thinking, Jesus Christ, I got to get to bed and get up early in the morning.
It's past my bedtime now, Jay.
No,
seriously.
Sorry. But thank you. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. And I don't know if we need to do this because he's already been most of it. But here he is, Mr. Kenny Robinson himself. Kenneth Robinson.
I've just enjoyed the debate. It's been like in a school debate.
Yes,
I've been picturing Rosie on the other side.
I'm just thinking you're a bit more like Trump than the other one. It was hard to control you, but we reined you in the end. So that's the main thing. So, but
It'll be the last time.
Yeah. And thanks to each and every one of you that joined in tonight, and also the ones that are watching on the replay, because we can't do I can't do what I'm doing here without the support and love of each of you for joining in and watching and commenting and stuff like that. If you're watching this on YouTube, there weren't many. I did see many comments from YouTube. Please hit the subscribe button and the bell so you know when we are coming on live. Or if not, we are on this same time, which is 8 p.m. Australian Daylight Savings Time. I actually pulled a piece of paper and printed this out. So if you're in Queensland, it's 7 p.m. on Sunday nights. If you're in the UK, you're looking at, oh, God, it's printed it out and hasn't put the times on it. Yeah, we'll just do the time converter. That was a waste of time doing
Google that.
But look, wherever you are, I know in the States it's a little bit early for you guys, but you'll be able to catch a replay. By all means, send us any comments through and any questions you have as well. Just to wrap it up, I'm just shuffling a bit of cards. I usually do this pre-hand and type it up, but I didn't get a chance tonight, so I'm going to pull a question out to leave you guys all with. Okay, the question of the night is, how much of your unhappiness might turn out to be simply an inherent feature of any concerted attempt to live in a close proximity to another human? Wow. Isn't that relatable to what we talked about tonight? How much of your unhappiness might turn out to be simply an inherent feature of any concerted attempt to live in close proximity to another human being? The cards have it. So, guys, if you've got an answer to that question, by all means, put it in the comments below. DM me if you have any questions you want answered on the show. As you know, on Wednesday night, we have Ask Jay at the same time. Wednesday night, 8 p.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Savings Time, 7 p.m. Queensland. Check your local guides for what time it is in your area. I'll try and put the right schedule up with the times on it and not just the areas. And we will definitely be there Wednesday night. So thank you to each and every one of you. Just before I wrap it up, where are we?
You've been watching the internationally acclaimed Jay, who stays at Travelodge while doing this program.
The Travelodge is not as flashy as it used to be, but other things. I've never walked into a Travelodge with socks and underwear, Oh, no, actually, I've just done all my washing, but that's all in the lounge. But anyway, we're going off track. But look, thank you to you two tonight, Rosie and Ken, for being on here and having your say. I really appreciate your time for being with us. Thank you to each and every one of you for joining in tonight as well, because I can't do what I do without your support and love. So thank you very much. So until next Sunday night, if you're watching Simplified Relationships, we will see you same time next Sunday night, or we'll see you Wednesday night or Wednesday, or wherever you are in the world, at the same start time for Ask Jay, where we answer some questions that you guys send in to us. So thanks to everyone for joining. Have a good night. Rosie, go get some sleep and a big week for you tomorrow. Thank you, Ken. Go and you'll probably be in your man cave for another 2 hours before you get to bed at midnight, sort of things. So.
I'm hoping Rosie will talk to me after this.
I think I've had enough of you for one night, Ken. Come on.
But thanks, guys. I really appreciate it. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next episode. Good night, good afternoon, Good evening, wherever you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.